Malaysian plane was shot out or blown up in the air. And I said to myself, wow, what's going on with this Malaysian Airlines? Didn't they just lose one that was the cover story in the American news for 7 weeks in a row, and now another one blew up? So I'm telling you, that's what was my initial thought before I started hearing the spin. I don't know what happened, and no one really does. All this is, to me, as I see it, it's more of the propaganda to pit nations against nations by using an example that is a horror. But, hey, how many people were killed in Pakistan last week, in Waziristan? How many people are being killed right now as we speak in Gaza? I can tell you as a fact because I have the papers in front of me. I have the Weekend Financial Times. The Gaza story is on page 4. And in a very, very obscure kind of headline. Israel flags widening of ground offensive. Oh, Jesus, almost 400 people dead over there. But they used the propaganda of an airplane blowing up. Did it happen in the air? Is this more of Malaysia Air? Who shot it down? Did it get shot down? Nobody knows. But this is the first 4 pages of the Financial Times.
There are some intelligence reports coming out saying that they've got messages going between the rebels and their commanders talking about the plane being shot down. There's talk about images of a Russian missile carrier going into the area and dropping a missile off. There appears to be more and more evidence to suggest that the Russians are directly involved in supplying the missiles. If that's the case, what do you think the next step will be?
Well, let's go back to that evidence because the Financial Times has it all spelled out over here. Number 5, the Intercept secret recording of rebels. The 5th set of evidence is the most clear-cut. On Thursday evening, the SBU, Ukraine Security Service, released recordings of several conversations between separatist rebels. Some involved commanders, including, and right away, I'm stopped at it. Oh, this is coming from the Ukraine government? Now, there's a reliable source. Of course I would believe them. Let me tell you something, Ian, that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda, I tell you. We got the proof here, and Colin Powell is going to pretend to show it to you at the UN. I don't believe any of this. Why would anyone, considering the string of lies, as a young man being draft age during the Vietnam War, they lied about the entire Gulf of Tonkin incident that brought the United States into the war. That was admitted by McNamara, the defense secretary, many years later. So this is hearsay evidence coming from unreliable sources, the way I would see it.
What do you think then, though, if there is a link, though, between Russia and the rebels, and that has brought the plane down, what do you think the reaction of the United States will be?
Well, the reaction of the United States, ironically, just the day before this happened, the United States imposed more sanctions on Russia. And the European Union wouldn't go along with them. So the United States did them single-handedly. They weren't very strong sanctions, so the EU gave a nod to it. And then all of this hypocrisy about Russia, if they are supporting the rebels. Who's supporting the Ukraine government? Where are their arms coming from? We know our CIA director went there. There are reports that Blackwater, now known as Academy with an I at the end, they're there, the mercenary group. The FBI is there, allegedly. Who's supporting this other group? This is a civil war going on over there. We wrote about it before it happened. So now you're having outside sources taking an involvement in an internal conflict. And let's put it in another context. Suppose Mexico or Canada was at war with a civil war. And what if all of a sudden, from halfway across the world, the Russians started supporting, quote, the separatists in Canada, and the United States was supporting the government that they installed? how would it look then? So as an American and a believer in what this country was founded on, no foreign entanglements, that's the way I look at it. It's none of America's business. How many more losing wars do Americans have to start before anyone could say, mind your own business? Look at the wonderful humanitarian mission, better known as a time-limited, scope-limited kinetic action that the Nobel Peace Prize winner, President Obama, started in Libya. Look at what's going on over there now. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. So why would anybody want the European Union or the United States involved in somebody else's business, knowing only that everything that they have touched has turned into massive failure?
I suppose also you raised the issue before of what's happening in Gaza. I mean, the Americans are involved in supplying weapons over there as well, aren't they? So I suppose it's a similar situation, you could say.
It is a similar situation to the tune of over $3 billion, and now the Senate just rushed another $500 million, another $500 million into Israel. This is at a time when they're shutting off the water in Detroit because people can't pay their water bills. And the average size of the water bill that they can't pay is about $80 US. So again, it's the United States and its foreign entanglements. This isn't about isolationism, it's about non-interventionism. And again, all I can say is show me anything that the United States has touched in terms of war following World War II that they have not turned into a worse disaster than when it began.
So do you think there is a risk here at the moment? Because there's a lot of anti-Putin talk about, I mean, there are people saying he's got blood on his hands, he's directly involved with this, it's his fault effectively, saying the world leaders are furious with Putin for not telling the rebels to open up this area for a proper investigation. There's a lot of vehemence against Putin.
Well, of course there is, but when you say the world, who is the world? It's the West. It's Australia and it's the EU. You're not hearing this coming out of China. They call the West the world. And again, if you want to talk about blood on your hands, do you know how sick I am of watching Dick Cheney showing up on TV now, giving advice on what we should do with Iraq? You want to talk about blood on your hands? How about over 1 million Iraqis killed in a war that was started with lies? There were no weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. And now they're blaming Putin. Did he have an involvement in this? I don't know. But what I do say is, why would they do it? Why would the Ukraine government blow this out of the air? Why would the separatists, if they had the wherewithal to blow it out of the air? And why would Putin blow it out of the air? What is there to gain? There's nothing. And again, it goes back to my first reaction was, what's going on with Malaysia Airlines? I hardly heard of this airline before, and now all of a sudden they're making major news. Is there something else going on? Is there any truth in that report that as Putin just left the BRIC nation meeting in Brazil and his plane intersected with the Malaysian plane just minutes before it was blown out of the air? Is there any truth in that? I don't know. But again, it's very easy to pick a target and brand it and make the people hate the other person. You know, and that's what, as I see what's going on now. This is a rush to judgment. Where is the evidence? It says it right here in the New York Times. Without going into detail about the intelligence, he had been shown, Mr. Obama said.
The U.S. intelligence was telling airlines not to fly into this zone. U.S. Airlines, we understand Qantas, we understand Air France, British Airways had been avoiding this zone since late April, when U.S. intelligence said the likelihood of a missile hitting an airliner was high enough to ensure that you don't fly in that area.
Yeah, that's true. But there are also a number of other airlines that have been flying through, and they did it to save money because it was a quicker route. And they're also saying to the Ukraine government and again, this is only what I read, that they make money when the planes fly over your country. So they were trying to encourage them to do it well. But there were many other airlines that were flying over, as from what I read.
Hmm. When do you think the truth will be out then on this one, or do you think it will be used as you think it will be a way of turning the world against Russia and then having more sort of, war talk against Russia?
Absolutely. I don't think we'll ever know the truth about this, just like we don't know the truth about so many other things. And again, you go to the TrendsJournal that we just put out, the summer edition. I did a whole beginning piece about President Bush's speeches the evening of 9/11 and 9 days later. Only an imbecile would believe the words that he said, with absolutely no proof, just like the New York Times says right now, without going into detail about the intelligence. They've easily made Al-Qaeda the enemy, and he even used the word, a person by the name of Osama bin Laden. So right away they did it really quick, and they also made it nice to put in Islam and Muslim in there so you could have a religion to hate as well. Not one shred of evidence was ever shown. And again, the shreds of evidence that was shown that led us into Iraq War on that dog and pony show that Secretary of State Colin Powell put on the UN was just that. It was no evidence at all. So what I believe is happening here, this is a continuation of what had begun as the overthrow, like them or not, of the democratically elected government of Ukraine, and this is a continuation of that disaster.
Our Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, has said that Russia couldn't wash its hands of the disaster, and he also made it clear that he thought it was Russian-controlled, and I quote, Russian-controlled territory, Russian-backed rebels, quite likely a Russian-supplied weapon. This is what the information he's obviously being given to make him come out with statements like that.
Well, again, where's the proof? And then if you go back to before all this happened, there was a lot of commentary as the separatists were losing in different areas. Where's Russia? Where's Russia? How come they're not supporting them? And then when you read the statements by Putin and the foreign minister, they're saying, let in the international observers into there. They said that right away to look at the evidence, and that this was an international issue. So again, this is just more rhetoric. Where is the proof, Mr. Abbott? And I'm tired of hearing about this intelligence stuff. You want to know about some great intelligence? They can't stop hundreds of people a day coming over our borders. We're looking at over 200 children unescorted by parents flooding over the borders. But we got this intelligence, and I'm telling you, Dick Tracy put it together for us, so it's really solid. These guys, to me, it's just more rhetoric, and it's more baiting to make it very simple for us to hate a new enemy.
Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.